The March 10th, 2021 meeting of the Middleton Planning Board. Please be advised that all meetings are video recorded and broadcast live to the public. So we're open.
All right, I just shared my screen with the agenda.
Excellent. Has everybody read the February 10th, 2021 minutes?
Yep.
Are there any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the February 10th, 2021 minutes. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the minutes from February 10, 2021 as read.
Okay, Katrina, do we need to appoint anybody tonight?
I believe you do, because Nick Benugli is not here. He's a full member. So you have both Anthony and Joe Kitka here.
Okay.
That you could pick one.
All right. Well, can we vote them both in?
No, you have too many. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, you already have 4 members, so you just need one more.
All right. So who do we have in terms of seniority?
You know what? The last meeting, Anthony wasn't here and Joe was. So why don't you give Anthony a chance this time?
All right. So can we appoint Mr. Di Gregorio as a planning board member pro tem?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second the motion on the minutes.
All right. All right. Okay. So we have a second. So Mr. Di Gregorio, how do you vote on the acceptance of the minutes?
Aye.
Mr. York, how do you vote on the acceptance of the minutes?
Not really sure how when I'm mute, but that's okay. Aye.
Mr. Garber?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So do we have everybody there? I think we do.
I think you do.
Aye.
So I don't see Mr. Tallerman out there. And Katrina, tell me if you can see him. I cannot.
Oh, wait. Yep, he is here.
Here we go.
There you are. Good evening.
Good evening.
Long time no see. So I don't know if you wanted me to explain why town council is here, Chairman?
Yeah, that would be great if you could.
Okay, so at I think starting in January, the board reviewed some recommended templates for security, different types of security, tripartite agreement, letter. No, we didn't have a letter of credit. We had the performance bond for insurance. And what was the last one? I forget. But the other two were adopted, no problem, the tripartite and the other one. And the board held off on voting on the insurance bond because they had been hearing from developers, attorneys before them that they were having a hard time finding an insurance company that agreed to sign the town form. And so the board was reluctant to adopt it, and they had questions. And so they asked to have Jay Tallerman back and just to answer those questions. And I think specifically the board had a question on, where was it? Right here, this highlighted yellow section. You know, like, why was that highlighted? And Jay, I didn't have the answer. I think it's probably something that you can decide to include or not include.
Yeah, I always, that's not in every single agreement. Sometimes I think it's easier to just have whatever money is left over in the account drop back to the town. It's probably an easier feature to use that where there's a passbook or some other kind of cash instrument where the security entity, the bank or the bond company is not still around, because trying to even find someone to give the money to at a late stage when the project has failed can be difficult. So I could see that being wanting to take it out. I usually start with it, but I'm fine taking it out and allowing just a regular accounting with money to go back if it's unspent to the entity that's providing the funds.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure that was the one part that the board was was holding the board back, because this first one I forgot. I had included a sample from a different community where I think it's down in, is it Plymouth? Plymouth. They found an insurance bonding company that agreed to sign the town form, and that's right here. And then here's the insurance certificate or afterwards. So we know that there are companies in Massachusetts that will agree to do this. And I don't know how the board feels. If we take that line out that's highlighted, does that make you feel better about adopting this form?
Well, here's, I do a lot of liquidated damages litigation, and here's the deal. If you say something is liquidated damages, and somebody agrees to it, it goes through a complex analysis as to whether it's awardable. So in other words, it sort of has to reflect a real reality that the client, that the parties anticipated when they contracted. So if you think $10,000 is going to be your forecasted damages and it's sort of around $10,000, then that is held and kept as liquidated damages. The only problem is if you can contract for something so specific, the court might say, well, you already sort of bargained for that, and it's always going to be exactly that. We're not going to give you other damages like consequential damages, etc. So you're sort of locking yourself in, both as the town creditor and the advantage is it's more predictable. But it does handcuff everybody a little bit. So I guess you want to say at this point, if there's something that goes wrong with this agreement, do you want to be sort of handcuffed into an agreement, or do you want to have the flexibility to sue for more or less? And that's what liquidated damages is. It basically locks everybody in to a specific set of damages should things go awry. So I guess we have to decide whether it's an important material term, something that we want to lock ourselves into a little bit more, or we want to leave things a little bit more flexible.
So David, it's not really the classic, interesting. My my very first trial ever as a lawyer in 1994 was a liquidated damages case on a $5,000 liquidated damages clause in a purchase and sale agreement.
Sure.
That case sticks with me, as does the what you state about what it's for. This is a little bit different.
Sure.
This provision couldn't ever hurt us. What this is really, and I don't have a problem with taking it out. So the town can never lose under this. So normally we are allowed to use up in any security instrument against the company that's providing the surety. We are allowed to use up to the full amount of the security they're providing. But normally there's like an accounting. Well, we use so much of the money and you get the remainder back. Sometimes there's a reasonable estimate of the pain that the town is going to go through when they are doing security, because liquidated damages should be a reasonable estimate of anticipated damages that you might suffer. We say, all right, let's just cut the bull. If things go south, we get it all. Now, a bond company is unlikely to agree to this particular clause very often, and banks don't even like to agree to it very often. So we see agreement more on this with cash deposits because the developer is normally long gone at that point anyway. So here, the the reason why a bank wouldn't want to agree to it is there could be just literally sidewalks left. And at the time when we have to go into the security, and there could be $500,000 in there and we only need $60,000. So of course they wouldn't want to do that. If they're an entity that still exists, they should be getting that accounting back. So I normally start with this. I highlight it because it's something that institutions that are going to be around for the long haul are generally going to object to. So it's kind of, I highlight it to note that it's something that we can easily take off. It doesn't really affect our rights to go after the full amount of the security, but we have to justify it a little bit on a case-by-case basis.
So can we, if you're saying this could be a tool, but it's not necessarily a tool, can we vote on an alternative form, Katrina, or
Sure, you could just vote to revise it by taking that line out if you're not comfortable with it, and then just adopt the form without that line and can be revised.
I'm thinking more, can we vote on the form with flexibility? In other words, can we vote that the form could contain this, but does not have to?
But Dave, do we want to review this form every time someone puts in a request? I mean, because then it creates a lot of work. We don't have to put a standard form, it's kind of take it or leave it. Otherwise, we're going to have to get together and review this and decide on a case-by-case basis.
No, but the vote would be to accept the form. We don't have to re-review it, is my understanding. Or if we do, just tell me. But we would accept either version.
So if it makes
or not.
Well, if it makes the company uncomfortable, they'll mention that probably.
Right, and then whomever is dealing with them has the flexibility to write it this way or with the highlighted contents or not.
I'm concerned that if we give anyone flexibility, then they're going to look to change other sections of language in the form.
I agree. This opens a door that we really don't want to open. I think that insurance company legal departments are going to say, well, if they're willing to get rid of this, then let's try for X, Y, and Z.
So you want to keep it in, but Mr.
I'm
Callan
okay
just said.
I'm okay to actually, Dave. I'm okay to take it out and just not have
I
it.
agree.
Yeah, I agree. It's got to be one way or the other. I'm not really preferential to either.
Yeah.
I think Dave made a good point. What if we were holding, there was $100,000 worth of work to be completed. We were holding 100,000. The guy goes in and due to improper work causes 300,000. Now it's a $300,000 finish up because of what he ruined. This locks, as Dave said, locks us into, you can't get an extra penny, right?
No, it does not do that.
Okay.
So this is just released. So first of all, to the extent that you're approving templates, and you don't have to the extent you're approving templates, I would keep this in 100% of the time when someone is depositing cash, because you want to have recourse against the full amount without having to chase someone down to where they live in Florida now, because 10 years ago they started a subdivision that they fled from. But this is just one remedy. And I think if Katrina, if you scroll down, you're going to see another remedy here. Nothing, number 4, nothing in this agreement may be construed as a waiver of the board's right to pursue any other remedy to compel the applicant's performance of its obligations. So this is just, that provision is a remedy against the entity that's holding the money, the bank, the security, the bond company, or whatever. That doesn't relieve the applicant, the developer themselves, from the obligation to finish the work. They may not have any money, and by and large, when we're reaching into security, that's often the case. But we do still have a culpable party. So if for some reason we undersold ourselves and there's not enough money left in the tank to do it, we can still pursue remedies against the developer themselves. Very often it's not that easy to do. Sometimes in a long project, we might add an additional provision that requires every 5 years, if it's going to be like a multi-year build out, every 5 years, kind of resetting the number, the amount. But for most routine projects, we set the amount and we hope that it'll be enough by the time they're done. And then we're also pretty stingy about releasing money during the course of the project, which sometimes happens. But we have other remedies. This is just the bond company or the bank.
And I did just check on the form that you had recommended and the board has already adopted for cash security does include that line as liquidated damages to be released by the treasurer.
I have a quick question, Katrina. If we decide to adopt this, and down the road we get feedback from developers saying that, more often than not, we're unable to acquire a surety bond that would agree to our standard template. Do we then have the option to remove this template, rewrite the template, modify it?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. You can change it every day if you want.
Every time we received
only, and then the form minus this provision for non-cash bonds.
I didn't hear what you said, David.
Okay, so from what I understand, council has just told us that this is important for cash bonds. So why don't we approve this template with the language left in for cash bonds and approve the template without it in there for greater flexibility for non-cash bonds?
Oh, because the cash bond one is completely different. It's very different than this one, right?
All right, then we don't need this language.
I wouldn't say it's very different, but it has some differences.
I'm just going through right now.
That's a question. The one you showed us that another town used, that's not the same as this, right?
No.
No.
So we don't even know, but the original problem we had was we don't know if any insurance company in the world would accept any of this. It's never been tested, right?
Well,
Which is the original problem we've always had.
But that's their problem. I'm not trying to be crass. No one wants to hold a developer up unnecessarily. But the reason we do these things is because the developer won't be around anymore and the development will have failed. And there could be people living there and we have to finish a road. So if it's good enough for a bank and they're willing to live by it, why wouldn't we hold a bond company to the same standard? The same problem still applies. The fact that bond companies don't like these agreements is proof that they don't like paying out. They don't like these because they protect the town, not them. Their agreements that they want us to sign protect them and have all disputes essentially resolved in their favor. So,
what's your opinion on the one that the other town uses that we know?
I don't know. Katrina would have to scroll down and see it. Let me see it here.
Do you want to go from the beginning?
Yeah, just from the beginning and just kind of. All right, so keep scrolling. That's all just basics. Keep going. So stop there. This one's actually not that bad. Normally they're a lot weaker, so the town council must have kind of won over this, or must have been a project that was pretty safe financially. Because this one has, it's those provisions where the one in the event HPR LLC shall fail to complete the obligations as specified in the performance bond and within the time. The performance bond may be enforced in whole or in part by the planning board for the benefit of the town to the extent of the reasonable cost of the town completing said obligations as specified in this performance bond. But can you scroll down just a little bit more? I just want to make sure. Yeah, and the bond company signed on. This one's not terrible. It's still, I like to provide a little bit more discretion, but if you go to mine, the provisions, the key provisions, which is who's deciding. So if you want to scroll down to mine, keep going. So stop.
Okay.
So it says mine is that C paragraph, in the event the board determines in its sole discretion the applicant failed to complete any of the remaining infrastructure in a timely, proper, and adequate manner, then it shall inform the applicant in detail what work remains to be completed, and the applicant shall have an additional 60 days. And then the next one, you know, goes into that. So it just lays it out a little bit more tightly. It gives them a right to cure it, but then it essentially, it puts more, mine puts a little bit more control in the hands of the board. But this form also has some curing mechanisms for the bond company. If they want to fix it and not pay the money out to us and hire a contractor, which they generally don't want to, but if they want to, they can. So I kind of have some assistance on that side as well. But it all amounts, the main principle that I go for, regardless of how you write it up, is that developer fails to do the work, town is dissatisfied, town decides what the standard is, town demands the money, and if the town demands the money, the bond company's got to give it over, period. There can't be any equivocation where if the bond company decides that the work isn't done, or if the parties dispute that it hasn't been done, then they'll hire a third party. I just want the power to be in the planning board to decide when the work isn't done and what work still has to be done. How you get there is a little less important to me. It can be stylistic. So that agreement in Plymouth, it's not as robust as mine, but it's not bad. It's a pretty good agreement. I wouldn't jump up and down and protest that much if that was an agreement that bound some of your projects.
Hey, Jay, let me ask you a question. A two-part question. Is
Froze again.
Can you hear me?
I
Yep.
can.
Is part C there the real crux for your preferring this one over the other one that was accepted?
Well, I think C and D are pretty key. Even if you dropped out the highlighted portion of D, it's C and D go together. So C says we're putting them on notice, and D says, okay, if you don't finish it, we gave you a right to cure it, and we don't want to take their money. We don't want to finish projects. We don't want to hire someone. And then D is like, okay, you blew it, give us the money.
Okay, no, I was just going with, if it was just C and you could trim it down a little bit and insert it into the one that was already accepted, maybe.
Yeah, again, but don't forget that one that was accepted that one time doesn't mean it's universally. I mean, it's some evidence. But what I would say about the one that was accepted in Plymouth is if a bond company would accept that one, they would accept this one too. Again, there might be some tweaking by their counsel, or including asking to remove that highlighted portion, but they don't materially differ in terms of this overall scheme and process. This one is a little bit more clear in saying that when the planning board is going to cure it, it also is some benefit to the developer because it provides a clear mechanism for them to cure the defect. And the reason I do that it isn't so much because I, locking arms with developers, is my experience tells me that we want to try everything in our power to get them to finish the work, rather than the town at prevailing wage having to hire someone to do it ourselves. we want to kind of push them along. And if we give them notice, sometimes we'll get them to step up back to the plate and finish it up. You know, so that I just kind of learned over time to kind of have a little give and take here. But the principles here, C, D, E, you know, are all the, it's basically, if you read them side by side, they're not that different from each other.
I think we all have the same goals to give the town as much teeth as it can have. That's not the issue. The issue is that we want to document that insurance companies will accept. That's what started all that developers came to us and said that no insurance company would accept our form. So we need to make sure whatever we have, somebody will accept it. It doesn't have to be every insurance company, but we need a form that will be accepted, or be right back where we started.
Well, yes and no. So, Jeff, I think you're right. I mean, it would be good if they accepted it. The reason they don't accept it is because they don't want to be betrothed into someone else's decision making. They're an insurance company. It's no different than the insurance company that tries to deny your claim when you get an offender bender. It's the same basic principle. So they might be reluctant to do it. So, but that doesn't mean it's not right that they do it. And I will also state that there are situations where someone may go to an insurance company because it's convenient, but they have other mechanisms. Most developers have a relationship with a bank who's giving them a lot of money. And the overwhelming majority of subdivisions that I work on or other projects that require security, we do it with a tripartite agreement. The bond agreements are less common. And sometimes if a developer wants to use a bond and they strike out, they'll just say, all right, I'll go to my bank and just do it. So I'm not trying to push them there, but I also don't want you to be in the position saying, well, the bond company doesn't want to accept the form, so where are we? You make the rules. And if I guarantee you that if you substitute your agreement with something that lets them call the shots on when money gets released, which is what the bond companies would like to do, you're never going to see the money.
Well, it seems to me that since the bond companies are probably the least of the groups that we want to deal with because of their attitude of paying.
Brian, you're freezing again. I also believe we lost our chairman and he just came back.
No, I've been here the whole time. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I just found you in the other room. Chairman, I did want to mention that Attorney Jill Mann is in the other room. If you wanted her to join the discussion.
Yeah. Let her in. If she wants to say something, sure, go ahead.
Katrina, do we have a good way to track the number of times that we are successful in having an insurance bond company to accept and the amount of times that they would decline?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you what my experience has been in the communities that I've worked with. I've never seen an insurance bond before Middleton. And I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because in Middleton, they didn't have to execute a form approved by the town or city. I'm not sure the reason why, but I think normally you don't see insurance bonds that often for covering subdivisions.
But if we were to put it into place, this would be something new that we would be tracking as a town to figure out whether or not it's a document that is, we're having success with, or whether it's, just creating undue, I shouldn't say undue.
So what you will see, if you keep track of it, you'll see that before adopting this form, 100% of the insurance bonds that were submitted to us were accepted. And then afterwards, well, I'm not even sure we'll see when someone won't even choose an insurance bond if they know that they have to execute this form with it.
Well, we would give this form to them saying, please give this to your, insurance bond company. Do we have a way to track the response from them to say they accepted or they declined it? Does the town have a way to track it?
I mean, I can just keep track of it somewhere. I don't think it's going to happen that often, because think of it, we usually see the same representative before us anyway.
Mhm.
And so if that person knows that this form has to be filled out, they will alert the developer who is seeking the security, and they'll know that they have to fill this form out. So I have a feeling we'll either see insurance bonds or we won't. We won't know the reason why we didn't see them or we
I don't
did
think
see
any
them.
developer would have a problem with this one. I think it's the insurance. I don't think they have a problem with it at all. I think the problem is that they go to their insurance company and they refuse the form. I don't think they wouldn't want to, the developer wouldn't want to sign it. The
Yeah,
insurance.
the developer won't have a problem. It's definitely the insurance bond company that will, the lawyers don't want to go back and forth redlining a document. They don't want to review a million different towns' documents. Out of the 5 companies that I asked about, only one of the 5 said that they would even consider it. And my guess is they probably wouldn't accept it. Like Jay mentioned, this is a little bit, I did a lot of research to try and find other forms. There's a G3 surety company form that the town of Concord uses. And a lot of these forms are a lot more watered down, and kind of bland compared to what ours definitely puts the ball in our court.
Well, two things we just heard from, this is Joe. 2 things we just heard from Jay and from Katrina is that they hardly ever see insurance bonds, right? And the reason is probably because the insurance companies, whether it's this form or any form, right, Anthony, they don't want to negotiate the terms, right?
Right.
So that's why you're seeing the bank tripartites, et cetera. And so if we adopt this form, we may not see insurance bonds, but if it's a good tight form, that isn't necessarily a problem for the town or even for the developer if they have other access, right? So it sounds like maybe worst case, even if we adopt the form, and we can always change the form if we're getting the same conversation every time and it's going nowhere, and we think we should. It doesn't necessarily mean there's not going to be development. It doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to get an agreement in place. It just means we may not be seeing the insurance bonds that we've seen in the past because we didn't have any format, if you will, for that, right? Mm-hmm. Is that a fair way to put it, Jay and Katrina and everyone?
Yeah.
Right.
So just because I guess I'm not as stuck on the fact that like no insurance company is going to just outright say, this looks great, I'll sign it. That doesn't necessarily make me feel like we shouldn't adopt this form or a similar form. Because it won't necessarily stop development or anything. They just won't use, maybe they won't use.
It may just delay it a month while they go to 5 different insurance agents and a million different insurance bond companies to try and get it approved. And that's just getting the project off to a bad start and a rocky start. So,
but if every other town is seeing more bank agreements, for example, and they're having development, I mean, as Katrina said, if you're working with the same council a lot, right? They're just going to go to their banks, right? They're not even going to do the steps you just explained, Anthony, right?
I guess can we ask that of Jill? If we do put this in place, would you go to your petitioners and say, look, this is a waste of time. You're better off going directly to the bank?
So if I may, I do surety bonds fairly frequently because I have a lot of clients who are either large privately held investors. REITs will use these, people who don't actually need banks. So while I don't disagree with the form at all, I think, Attorney Tallerman did a great job. I have no issue with the form, and I told you I didn't before, but I can assure you I won't be able to get an insurance company to do it. So like I said, every time I've done it, it's because there isn't a bank. And I've done it in other communities. I've done it in Wilmington. I've done it in, I don't remember if I had to do it in Hamilton. I definitely have done it in Middleton. I have to think more about other communities in which I've done it, but I actually have just gotten the surety bonds. So if I know that this is the position of the town, I simply would tell my client that not to go to insurance company. You just eliminate the avenue. So it's almost better, even if you don't waste Jay's time or the board's time and just take the surety off. And I'm not saying it's wrong, by the way. I have no opinion. That's completely within your hands. But I can assure you, I'm never going to get this signed. I tried, because before this was in place, I had tried to get that surety, not the one most recently approved, but the one before, when I got that form. And then because the form came in afterward, the board allowed me to use the surety and then allowed it to come into place again this most recent time. So now I know that I can't really use that. And I would seek an alternative form. If that's what the board's preference is, that's, as long as I know, it's fine with me. So that is how, that's why you don't see, a lot of people may not see it. They may not just have clients that just don't have bank financing. That's all.
I think if we're going to adopt a form, it should be something that in good faith, we think there are insurance companies that'll take it.
Then no one's going to take this. I really did try. I mean, and I think Mr. DeGregorio also has told you. That's why I say to you, honestly, it's probably best not even to bother and just to eliminate that form of surety. Again, I just wanted to let you know that, and I respect the fact of whatever the board's decision is, it is. I will stop unless you have a question.
I guess at this point, Dave and Jay, do you guys agree with maybe just nixing it?
Why would you nix it? I wouldn't nix it. The fact that no one, first of all, I'm not disbelieving Jill at all. The fact that she has not had a good success rate, A, doesn't surprise me, but B, that not all projects are created equal. Yeah, there's going to be few and far between where an insurance company is going to want to sign an agreement like this. They may sign something similar to it, but it's obviously not a 0% success rate, but it is going to be few and far between. But I still wouldn't nix it. If it's available under the statute, a developer has the opportunity to seek an insurance bond. It's one of the avenues they can do. So you should have this in your back pocket if they find a surety that wants to do it. And if they can't, then they can deposit cash, a passbook agreement, or a tripartite agreement, and they'll be fine. So, but I wouldn't nix it. I would just put it in your back pocket.
Anthony, do you think the one that Katrina showed us would be accepted? There's enough of a difference between this one and that one that a company would take the other one and wouldn't take this one?
So my guess is that you might only find 10% to 15%, and that's just a guess, of companies that would even consider a town-specific form. And out of that 10 to 15%, I would say very few, if any, would agree to the language in the one that we've drafted. I would say probably a little bit higher percentage would accept the one that we reviewed from, I think it was Plymouth. And then I saw a really bland one in Concord. It was called their G3 form, I think. And I would say probably out of the 10 to 15% that would consider town-specific forms, I would say most of them would accept that because it is pretty watered down. But overall, in general, I think we're still talking about, no matter what type of town-specific form we put in place, I think we're more often than not going to see the petitioner seek other forms of security, because they're not going to want to, go knocking on 100 different doors to try and get one company to agree to a form.
So I think that's a shame that they may not be able to use an insurance bond, but it is only one of the forms of security that they have to choose. And I think we need to be thinking of what's the best for the town. And it may be that insurance bonds aren't the right type of security for subdivisions because they won't agree to sign these forms.
This is what I was trying to say when I said nix it. I mean, if it's not a good deal for us overall to deal
But
with.
it is. But there,
It is a good
it is
deal
a
for
good
us.
deal for us if we have the terms that we want.
That's a great
and I
deal
guess-
for us.
Yeah, and I guess what Anthony is saying, almost similar to what I said earlier, although I was kind of proposing that if we accept this form, and there's still the opportunity for an insurance company to come back and say, I would do it if you change this, this, and this. It may be a very small percentage of insurance companies and maybe none, but it doesn't close off all the avenues for security. And it does protect the town, according to council. If we adopted it and we had the ability to negotiate it for any specific deal, the town does, and we have the ability to change it, if we end up with mostly other forms of security, the development can still happen. I'm not sure why we would be motivated to make sure that our form would be accepted by every insurance company, because if it was, we wouldn't be protecting the town, is my guess, right? So
I think for me, while we're protecting the town through the form, we're also, potentially limiting the amount of people that want to do business in Middleton. I come from a town that that town specifically has developers within the town that have said we will not develop in this town anymore. The people that develop there are outsiders who don't necessarily care about the quality of the project. They're not there to oversee the project because of how difficult that town is to work with. So I don't want to see Middleton become one of those towns and get off to a wrong foot by sending a petitioner to 5 million different insurance agents because they want to get a surety bond.
So let me give you some perspective on that too, and I think those are good points. I've represented a lot of towns, and I've also represented a lot of developers too, and where I've certainly heard a lot of developers complain about a certain town's bylaws. Sometimes I think it's bluster, sometimes I think it's legitimate, and I've worked in towns that are really difficult. Seldom has that reason been because of the security instruments that a board has used. It's been directed at the length of permitting or the complexity of zoning bylaws or wetland bylaws or a really tough building commissioner or something, or zoning administrator or planner. I've never seen it mined down into this kind of detail on this as being the reason. That's not to say that it couldn't be a contributing factor. The other thing I wanted to say is it's not that it is consistent. If it's a good development, they're going to be able to find a way to do security in another way or get a good relationship with a bank. But it's not that security companies are against going with these forms. They might be looking more at potential failure rates on their own for developers. So it's not whether they find these provisions to be particularly noxious. It's that at the end of the day, they're managing the risk of a specific project as to whether or not it will be successful or not. So there are other types of developments where we're seeing bond companies willingly give money every single time and agree to a form that's substantially similar for a different context. Solar, for example, we see a lot of these bond instruments. It's a slightly different thing because it's not completing work, it's decommissioning work at the end, but it's still them securing that performance. And they've been readily accepting clauses that are very similar. So it's not some kind of, in my opinion, it's not because they're offended in some way by these clauses. It's because they're measuring the risk of the project as to whether or not they may be left holding the bag. And that's not on us, that's on them and their relationship with the developer. I'd also state that in those instances where we have seen them in renewable energy and other kind of non-residential contexts, we've seen some nice negotiation around some of these specific provisions that are on the screen now. And I've given a little bit where it's a project that the town wants, and they asked me, would you be okay with giving there? And the board's been okay. You know, you could have some kind of third-party review or a mini dispute mechanism over a dispute on how much pavement a road needs or something like that. There's all kinds of things you can do in the spirit of compromise, but where you start from is important. And I would start from the most protective form. And if they feel that they still want to do business with you all and with the developer, but they need you to take a little bit off the top, then we could discuss it on a case-by-case basis. That's how I would approach it.
I don't think we're looking for a form that every insurance company would take. I just like to know if any insurance company would take it. There's a big difference.
Well, they've taken forms very similar to this in those other contexts, Jeff. So I've done a bunch of solar agreements that have some of these same super highly controlled clauses that inure to the benefit of the planning board. Again, more on decommissioning of solar projects and wind turbine projects and certainly non-residential contexts where there's slightly less risk and it's a slightly easier thing to measure. But you know, they'll accept them if it's a project that they want to get behind and there's money in it for them, they'll accept it. If there's too much risk, they won't. But it's not because of our clauses; they're just looking at risk.
David, are you still here at the meeting?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Why?
Because your video wasn't on and I couldn't see even. You're unmuted. So it just looked like nothing was there.
I can see, folks, I can hear you very well. I heard this debate. We're going actually probably bumping up against an hour on the discussion of this tonight that goes with several other evenings. And so the chair is probably, if you want to talk about another 5 more minutes, the chair is probably going to entertain a motion pretty soon on this form or not, whether we want to leave flexibility open and not adopting anything, or we want the opposite of flexibility. I think we need to, make a decision.
Could I bring up one point? If you don't adopt this form and someone submits an insurance form, it still has to be run by town council for him to approve. And
it's supposed to be run by you too. I mean, they can't.
Right.
A great bond form. We want something tougher. You don't have to have this approved at all. It's good to. I think this process is good, so you're ready to move whenever. Don't get me wrong, but if you had nothing in place and someone came in with something, you said, hey, let's ask Jay. And I said, I don't like it. Here's something I do like. We could do it on the spot. I do like the idea of kind of having a predictable template so developers know what they're getting into ahead of time, but it's not, there's nothing requiring it.
Right. So I was just kind of thinking if they decide not to adopt this form and there's no form, it's still going before you for approval because that's right in their subdivision rules and regs that they can't accept any form of security without town council approval. And so at that point, you would probably suggest this form.
Well, the issue's been called out. I believe Mr. Tallerman is now aware of it. I don't think anybody will forget this. And he's saying that there are more robust forms out there than what we're entertaining now. Now, did Mr. DiGregorio, am I misunderstanding you that you have some qualms with this form as well, correct?
I agree with town council that this form definitely puts the ball in our court, and I think that it, solves a problem in some ways that doesn't exist, where we haven't really had to go and collect, not saying that we won't have to, but from an insurance bond company But I feel like in more cases than not, we're going to cause, for someone who does want to go the insurance bond route to post construction security, they're gonna get the runaround from insurance companies, from insurance agents. They're gonna then go shop, through a million different insurance agents, a million different insurance companies, or they're just gonna say, as Jill mentioned, we're just gonna go to the bank and find a different form of security. So I think all we're doing is we're delaying potentially the start of projects while they try and post security.
And I'm sorry, Anthony, if a developer knows that there's this form that they have to fill out, they know before they even invest in the project now that
the developer
they
doesn't
may have
necessarily know that
problems.
there's going to be 2% of insurance bond companies that will sign it, and that out of those 2%, they could go to 8 different insurance agents and not find that the 2% companies there. So the insurance, the developer doesn't necessarily know that going into it.
Okay, so I think what we need to do is either table the motion now that town council and, or rather Mr. Talaman and this board understands what the issue is and that this is an archive, or vote for it one way or the other. I'm beginning to think perhaps just tabling it is probably what we want to do.
Well, there's no new information coming though.
You never have to take a vote on it, I guess, is what David is saying. You can just table it. You don't have to take it off the table. It's just going to sit in the background as a tool if you don't take a vote on it. Doesn't mean it goes away. It's up to you. You're not required to vote on it at all, obviously.
I actually have my hand raised. Would it be okay if I had just one comment, Mr. Chairman? It's Jill.
Sure.
So I would honestly prefer you take it off the table or put the form in, because it is not untrue that people will not understand. When you see that the town council has to approve the surety, it's simply submitting the bond that would be, in my opinion, the bond that would be produced, but that's not the case. What this board is really seeking is an additional document to support and attach to the bond. So that's a level that nobody would know. I didn't know it from the first time. I've never had to do that in any other place. Not that you don't have to in some places. I just never have. So I prefer to see this, to be able to tell my client, you're never going to get it, and then not have to go back and forth and find a bonding company, because it took me weeks to get a firm denial from an insurance company. I tried to get another one and I couldn't. So I guess what I'm asking is the board table it, whatever you want to do, but don't take no action, leave it in this amorphous category that it subject to town, council approval, and then I have to come in and find a form that's acceptable because I haven't had good experience, not because it's not appropriate, but because bonding companies or sureties, insurance companies aren't all that willing. And it's not as if they like a project or not, they just don't do it. Not for residential subdivisions. I don't know why. I guess they've done it for the removals in solar. I've never had to post. Oh, yes, I did. I had to post a bond for solar projects across the street. But anyway, I digress. I just would prefer if you took an action or removed it so that we would know how we're supposed to act, and if in fact sureties are an available form of bonding for this. Thank you.
Well, I see the only danger in tabling this, as someday it will be forgotten, and then this board is going to have to go back over this ground again. I think my personal opinion is that it should be tabled and kept as in archival form, and that if anybody who's participated in this sort of very long process will know that it's out there. Katrina, members of the board, Mr. Talaman, and Ms. Mann. And so, I don't know if we have to do a motion to table, or we can just not act on it.
I think based on the conversation we had, I'm in favor of putting the form out there. And if it's negotiable, that's where we get Jay's input. But let's just my take is put the form out there as a starting volley. If there are changes that the surety companies want, then, we have that conversation. And we just, you kind of set the bar to say, okay, here's a starting point. I think it makes things easier for Jay also, in the context that, it's not a new form and we don't have to, every company is going to have 10 different forms. So this way we have a form, and, maybe it makes things a little bit more efficient for us when we review what companies come back with.
So you'd like to vote on it, Mr. York?
Yeah, I would. I don't want to take it off. We've tabled this a number of times, and
Yeah.
I would like to just personally get it out there and kind of put it into action, and then see how it goes.
So there's a motion to adopt the form.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adopt the form as written.
Do we have a second? I would, my preference is not to vote on it or to move it into the archives only. In other words, not obligatory, but archival. But I'm not going to be seconding this motion. If somebody is going to second the motion, please speak up.
So it sounds like the motion failed.
Yeah. So we'll judge that as motion as failing. Okay.
You could ask for another motion if anyone has another motion to make.
Does anybody else have another motion? Hearing none. That motion, the original action fails. The original motion fails of Mr. York. And I suppose we'll move on.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you. Happy to revisit this whenever we have to.
Thank you, Jay.
All right, take care. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
All right, item number 3, ZBA recommendations. 177 North Main Street, Bay Development North LLC, a special permit and site review plan for proposed 2 buildings, outdoor storage and contractor bay use. Katrina, any prefatory comments?
I do not. I believe Attorney Mann is here to present this project.
Sure.
And Jill, you have the mouse. It's all yours.
Thank you very much. Jill Manhart here on behalf of Bay Property Management North LLC, the owner of the development rights up at 177 North Main Street. So this project has been before you a few times. As you know, it is the project that has Salem Metal building and Regal Fabrics building. At the present time, there are additionally 2 other buildings, which are industrial bays that are located in the center in between those 2 end units. This is a condominium. Those are the constructed, already built contractor bays are known as Building 300 and Building 600. Both of those are the subject of a special permit in this particular application because we're seeking to have them used as contractor bays. Initially, we didn't know whether or not they would be used for manufacturing or if it was going to be motor vehicle, but you never know what they're going to be used for. However, our experience now, because we've put it out to lease those buildings, is that most people want to be able to have contractor bays. So for example, landscapers, electricians, plumbers, anybody of that ilk has to get a special permit in order to operate in those buildings. So we have put that as part of this application to get a special permit to have those buildings operated. They're already existing. They were part of the site plan. The second part of the application is actually a modification of the existing site plan. So when we first got the site plan approved, we had it approved with six, how many buildings? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buildings. And one of the buildings has yet to be constructed is an office building, and that still remains on the site plan. I'm going to bring up the approved site plan for you right now. And what we're proposing to do, can't get it to go there. Here we go. What we're proposing to do is to actually add to the project. I just want to show you what the existing site plan is. So as you can see, the existing site plan just shows, as I said, the 5 buildings, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 in the middle. So now what we're proposing is to actually modify the site plan, and I'm going to go to the modified one. Site plan. The reason why you see so many sign modifications is because I'm required to show you when we have all decisions that have been before, and both Kahan and Vining had slight modifications to their building, and that's what those modifications were all about. So let me find, okay, so here are the 2 new buildings that we're proposing. So we actually are proposing to expand our industrial park to include 2 new buildings. They're known as buildings 700 and 500, and you can see them right here. I'm going to make this a little larger. I don't know how well you can see or not see. Okay, I made it smaller. I can't tell a plus from a minus. I apologize for that. Here we go. Okay, so you can see building 700 is basically a building that has 9,600 square. I mean, I apologize. This one only has it's a smaller building. Building 500 has 9,600 square feet. The other building actually has, I'm looking to try and find the exact number, and I thought I could see it here, but I can't. I'm going to blow this up because I can't see anything anymore. My eyes as I get older get worse. Okay, let's see. I'm going to blow it up so you can just see the one building at a time. Nope, it won't go.
What are you trying?
Oh my God, I'm
do?
trying to make it go up. It won't do anything I say to do it. Okay, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to talk about them because honestly, I can't get it to work. So building 500. I know.
Tell me what you want to show and I can try it.
All right. It's hard when it's on your screen. I think
I'm going to take over.
All right. So let me take over again. I think I'm just going to show on this screen. I'm just going to talk about it. So this is building 700, and this is building. Okay. So now it's got something reaching across it. Okay. So this is building 700, and this is building 500. As you know, basically we talked about, they are brand new buildings. Building 700 is the larger building. It's 9,600 square feet. Building 500 is the smaller and has 5,000 square feet. But this building, which is building 500, actually has the ability to put a mezzanine on. There isn't one now, but there's the ability to do so. The other building does not have the ability to put a mezzanine. It's just going to be the 9,600 square feet. Both of these buildings each had 3 units. That was decided to be the preferable option based on what we're seeing for leasing environment. They all have overhead doors, and we do have one small storage area for each of the buildings. That's right here. So this building 700 has 500 has, almost 2,000 square feet of storage. Outdoor storage. And then the other building, which is building 700, has a very small area of storage. It's somewhere around 500 square feet. Basically, many times these owners of businesses want to just be able to pull in some equipment, pull in some materials. They might have pipe, they might have an excavator, they might have something of that nature that they want to be able to put on site to store, because most of the time, if there are any contractors, like a site contractor or a landscaper, they predominantly take their machinery and move it to site to site to site. They don't usually bring it back to a location except on a temporary basis, which is why sometimes they'll need this, and that's why we provide. As I said, each of these buildings has overhead doors. And they basically require six, they don't really require six, they require maybe a little bit under 6 parking spaces per building, 2 per unit. We provided 6 parking spaces, individual parking spaces out here, 4 for this building, 2 over here for this building, and then a combination here, which is 10 spaces of 6 for employees and then space for visitors. Obviously, there are garage doors, so there's always space in front of the garage doors for people to pull in their vehicles, and then you can also pull them in the interior. They are intended to be able to be accessed. There's one nice feature to this building. It actually has a little outdoor seating area. This area is not storage. There's no way to get to it by vehicle. This is simply being able to be accessed through this man door. So you'd walk out, there'll be picnic tables out there, and things like that, just to provide a relaxation amenity for people working at that particular site. So that's what these buildings are. And because we know that a substantial amount of the interest is being generated is basically for contractor bays, we also are seeking here a special permit to allow each of the 6 units to be used by contractors. In addition, because we have outdoor storage, just for these 2 buildings, we're required to have a special permit or request a special permit for outdoor storage, which we have done. This did, just so you know, this did go before the department review. So we did meet with Mr. Fullerton, Board of Health. We met with Mr. Goodwin, DPW. We met with Bernie Kenny, excuse me, from MELD. Ms. O'Leary was there. We met with Chief Martinuck. I don't know that the police chief was there. However, we did meet with all the department heads. And one of the questions that was raised by Mr. Fullerton was, how do you control the noise? Well, and I did speak to my client after that, and we had discussed the possibility of a condition that says, look, we're not going to entertain any work outside. So essentially what had been some of the problems that Mr. Fullerton had encountered were, for example, a granite company that would grate down the granite or grind the granite outside. That will never happen here. Mr. McKinley, who is the principal of the proponent, is more than willing to accept a condition that says none of these tenants would be permitted to work outside their units. In addition, there was some question relative to how do we screen. Basically, what we had done when we first created the industrial park is we have a planting all around the property, and it actually shows on the landscaping plan. I figure you probably would want to see something like that. So let me take you to that. But we do have a landscape plan that shows trying just to get there, that shows the tree lines. Here we go. And all right, I'm on that plan. Chris, are you on this, Chris? Because I can't blow this up fast enough to show them. Here we go. There we are. Okay, so you can see where it says existing coniferous trees, which are just existing evergreen trees. They exist all along this back property line. And what that does is they're huge trees. They're 15-foot trees. And they were planted 2 years ago. So this line of trees that exists in this area behind this building, and the reason why we focus on this building is you can see that there are doors out on this side, and that is why. So there's a fairly decent grade change, but also this is entirely planted by 15-foot evergreen trees. I just wanted to make sure I told you that. So that is the request in a nutshell. And if anybody would like to ask any questions, I would love to entertain them. If you have any comments, I would love to hear them. Thank you very much.
Well, these appear to be sort of big buildings, so is a site visit in order? Or?
These buildings are actually kind of small for this park. The other buildings are 3 and 4 times this size. So I think Vining's building is 65,000 square foot footprint. The Hans building is probably about the same. The other buildings are probably 20, 25,000. This is, so, and these are 9,000 and 8,000. I mean, whatever, I don't think necessarily a planning board has site walks.
Right, Mr. Chairman, usually you don't do a site walk. I don't know who is making those marks right now.
That is weird.
I think
Yeah.
that was me accidentally. Sorry.
No worries at all. Yeah, I like your drawing.
And the risk you run by doing a site visit is by the time you meet again to make a recommendation, the Board of Appeals may have already voted on this.
Yeah. Okay, so we're just making a recommendation here anyway. You're right. Excuse me, but the existing buildings are very, very large.
Oh yeah.
And I know these are smaller. The existing ones are so big that this is still a pretty big building, and that's why I suggested that. Anybody else have any comments?
Katrina, I was trying to put up the picture so I could show Mr. McGlone. I'm trying to see how I have the photo. I can't. Now I'm drawing and I don't know how to undo
so
that.
I'm trying. If you stop moving that, I'm going to take control back and get rid of the marker because the marker is on right now.
Okay, planning board, help me here. Does anybody have any other comments? I'm still here, Katrina. Just my.
David, Mr. McGlone, I was trying to get you a picture so you could see it too, and I had included one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now it's in your control again.
Okay.
Now, the pictures are at the very end, right, Joe? I saw in the package that was sent.
Oh, that's a photometric. You saw the picture?
There were pictures in the materials that were distributed, right at the very end of that document.
Architectural plans, the building.
Thought I included aerial shot too. One sec, I can tell on my. Yeah, I have photographs. So you have to keep going down.
Yeah, I think they're literally the last page or two. Yeah.
There, that's what I wanted. Yep.
The photos?
Yep. So just so that Mr. McGlone can see them, because I understand wanting them. So these are the proposed buildings, Mr. McGlone.
I'm looking at them. I can see them.
Yep.
I'm still here, Katrina.
Pardon?
I'm still here. If you can't see me, I'm still here.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know.
I just have I have so many devices going. All right. Yeah, I see them. How far off the 114 of these?
Oh, gee whiz, 1,000.
They're at the very back.
They're at the very, very back of the property. I can
Yeah,
tell.
the more relevant question is how close they are to the houses on Dixie. Right. So,
Right.
Yeah. So we actually reached
And
out
there's some
to,
wetlands, I think, right?
yeah, we are. We reached out to the abutter that abuts these particular homes, and spoke with him, and he's fine. I mean, but we do have conifer trees, and there is a huge grade change, which is why I'm sure that they bought with the buildings on the top of the site, but also with particular these buildings, they have seen the plans.
Well, just remember, Beverly delineating, the whole Dixie Drive initial development as one of the first setback issues that Middleton ever had. And, that's why I paused when, I think about this lot, and I know, that we're just making a recommendation. And I'm saying to this board, don't spend too much time on recommendations after having some good ideas, because you're not voting on the substance anyway.
No.
I just want to make sure that a butter on the backside doesn't have a problem. There's nobody else out there with their hands up. Is it Katrina?
No one is here with their hand up, and I will tell you that didn't Brent actually buy this house and then sell it to this person?
Exactly. So
this person who bought it had full knowledge of this industrial park being here. It's not like they lived there beforehand in the woods and then this industrial park appeared. They bought knowing that this development would happen.
it's sort of difficult to hide that particular industrial park.
It is. Ms. O'Leary is right that this particular homeowner
Yeah.
purchased, and that we actually showed them the plans too. And then, this is Middleton Industrial Park. That's another industrial park to the right. And as I said, I think part of the benefit that this person sees is they knew the industrial park was there. They knew the construction was going on, but Brent provides screening. It's actually a well-maintained site, and it's very nicely screened.
All right, so the two things I see is you're talking about the screening, so that would be a condition on the vote, or something to point out on our recommendation, and also I heard you say about it's not industrial to the point where people are actually working; it's for storage only.
No, they won't do it outside. So if any work activity will be limited to the interior, and we agreed to that condition. So that's something we obviously would honor. We don't want people.
Right.
Nobody wants people outside working. They want it to be a nice professional park.
Right. No exterior fabrication.
Exactly.
And screening.
Exactly.
Any other? Anybody from the planning board? Bueller? Anybody? Bueller? No? Hello?
Who are you looking for?
Anybody?
Are you looking for
No other
motion?
questions. It seems pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, all right. So with those two stipulations, does anybody want to make a motion with stipulations or recommendation?
This is Anthony. I'll make a motion to make a positive recommendation to the ZBA.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. And is that with recommendations? For adequate screening and no exterior fabrication?
I believe that was already in there. If it's definitely, if it's not in the plans, but I thought I saw it in the plans.
No,
screening.
the prohibition on work outdoors was something that was just added since the development review group meeting. So that would be appropriate to add that as a condition, because I think the applicant is willing to do that.
Absolutely.
Mr. Di Gregorio, are you moving to make a positive recommendation with recommendations of no exterior fabrication, adequate screening?
Correct. With the recommendation that there was a positive recommendation with the requirement that there would be no exterior fabrication and screening per the drawings.
Okay, is there a second on Mr. Di Gregorio's motion?
I will second that as well.
Okay. Okay, so we'll vote Mr. Di Gregorio,
Aye.
Mr. York,
Aye.
Mr. Carroll,
Aye.
Mr. Garber,
Yes.
and I vote aye.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time and your comments.
Okay. Now we have item 3B.
Okay.
15B, Sharpness Pond Road, Kenworth of Southeast New England, Inc., special permit and site plan review to allow motor vehicle light service repair and contracting and equipment storage yard.
Oh, Katrina, I love that screen view best.
Okay, good, because I wanted you to see the colorized one. I just snuck in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So good evening, Jill Mann here on behalf of Kenworth Southeast. I'm very excited about this project. So everybody knows No Mid Industrial Park, right? The industrial park all the way off at the very end of Middleton in basically the entrance to this particular park is off of Sharpner's Pond and goes over North Andover in order to get into the Middleton property. There presently are 5 buildings there, 2 of which are in in North Andover. This building is a proposed building, which would be the 6th building. We call it Building E, and it will, it was already approved. The board and you approved it back a few years ago, but we wanted to do a build to suit. So over time, we got this applicant, which is Kenworth of Southeast, New England. And it's a large truck and heavy duty truck franchisee, excuse me. So they're a truck dealership and they deal with only brand new trucks. Now, obviously, every once in a while, you have to accept a trade-in. So somebody may come to you to buy a new truck, but they're going to give you their old truck. That's going to be a deal, right? So, and I think Mr. Garvin knows that pretty well, how it's going to work. So what we'll have is a first class, I think it's called Class 1, a motor vehicle dealership in this location. So I just wanted to let you know that, and we are going before the Board of Selectmen at the end of the month to ask for that license. So this is basically an entity that sells new heavy duty trucks. What's really interesting is in order for them to, how do I make it bigger, Katrina? Just double click on it. There we go. Okay. So essentially, we had a building originally permitted that was, thank you very much, that was 60,000 square feet. Because of the needs of having these large trucks, they're tractor trailer trucks, they need a wide berth in order to turn. So in order to accommodate that, we actually shrunk the building by 15,000 square feet. So as you see it now, it's a 45,000 square foot building. Tenant 1, which is Kenworth. So Kenworth is going to take, about 34,000 square feet of the building. And then tenant 2 is just going to be the balance of the building that the owner, who is the DeGrazia family, they're the trustees, who will rent to other parties. When this particular project was approved, we did have outdoor storage, and you can see it up in the right-hand corner. There's a piece of outdoor storage going to the right, which actually is currently used, and it will continue to remain. Basically, though, this particular building, as I said, we're shrinking it by 15,000 square feet and making more pavement so that these trucks can maneuver around the building. By the way, this too did go before the design review group, and it met very positively with everyone. The building had been reviewed before, because it's a smaller footprint, was, kind of a welcome. We don't infringe anymore into any other areas. We intentionally maintain the impervious area as it was on the original site plan. So what also we did, and it was very important for us to provide, and this is the plan that Ms. O'Leary has put up, is we identify where are we going to show the new vehicles? Where are we going to have vehicles for sale? And so you can see, if you walk around the lot, I think I have you see here, this is where the employees are going to park. So Kenworth employees will park here. But now as you meander around the corner, you can see it says storage and sales lots. And you notice how these are very long spaces. Well, that's because those long trucks, those heavy duty trucks that will be up for sale will be here. That doesn't mean they're going to have, it's not a car like a car lot where you might have 100, Toyota in the park up for sale. Most of these trucks are going to be ordered and then delivered and sold. So there will be some of them on site that will be up for sale, but for the most part, if vehicles are stored here, they're waiting to be picked up. And that's what we wanted to show. So we have the storage sales lot, we have storage sale lot here, and then storage sale here. And the reason why it's called storage sale lot is because this isn't parking. Parking traditionally is something that's temporary in nature, right? That you're not going to have people stay there or stand in a space for more than a day. You're not going to have vehicles that may have a dealer plate on them, but not, a road plate. So that's why we identify them as storage sale lot, because I've actually requested a special permit to have those particular areas be defined as storage, because in my opinion, they are. Then you can see in the back, those are simply storage spaces. And the reason why they're not called out as sales is because those will be where, if somebody has an issue with a truck that they purchased, they will come in and that's where they will be serviced. They park there. They get brought into the bays, which you can see the doors behind. I'm pointing with my finger. Isn't that brilliant instead of the pointer? So the doors here are where the vehicles would enter, and these are basically repair bays. What this is I had no idea what this was. Concrete strip trailer stands. Well, if you think about it, they're selling these very large vehicles. Many times they'll have an issue while they're on the road and they'll need to come in to get fixed, but they can't bring the trailer beds into the facility. So the big trucks come in and they literally drop their trailers here, disengage, and then bring the mechanical part of the truck into the building. That's what that trailer stand is. And I did identify that as part of the storage as well. If you're wondering what a mobile gantry is, it's something that lifts them, like holds them up. I don't know what the purpose of it is, but that's what that is. It's just part of something they need for this type of a vehicle. I think to be able to put on, like certain accessories, maybe they do sell things like cement trucks, garbage trucks, dump trucks, and then large tractor trailer trucks. This particular place will have about 25 employees. Maybe you'll have a few more at some point. So we purposely made employee parking to have 29 spaces. There is always going to be extra spaces in the storage space places, as well as we do have visitor parking. As you can imagine, very few people visit this. This is not a showroom where people are coming in and looking at these vehicles. You might have one or two people, and for the most part, they even try to make appointments to come in to see. But we do have visitor parking here, which are 11 spaces. Now for 10 and 2, we did show visitor spaces here, employee spaces here, and then to the extent that they would need more parking for this small building, which we don't believe they would, we have ability to add parking in the back because it's all paved. Again, this particular property is subject to special permits. So we had to request a special permit for motor vehicle repair. Whenever you have a car dealership, normally with what they call a class 2, which is used, you must have immediate access to an auto repair facility. And even in new cars, you really do need to have an auto repair facility. So that's why we're requesting a special permit for that. And obviously, as I said, we have these storage areas. So we did request a permit for those outdoor storage areas. And that's basically it. This is a modification of an already existing approved plan for a building that was larger. And that's about it. As I think I told you, we did appear before the department heads, and everybody was in favor. Well, I shouldn't say in favor because they don't vote. They didn't have any comments relative to the proposal or the modification. And thank you. And again, I'd welcome your comments.
I'm looking at an aerial of it, and also when you Google it, it really shows up in North Andover.
Yeah.
So it looks like there's no residences except for across the street on 114. Looks like there's a lot of woods between that and the next use. And that next use is in North Andover. Mm-hmm. And not my voters, not my problem, right?
I love it. Yeah.
So it doesn't look like it's going to affect anybody in Middleton that much. I defend entities a lot like this for a living, cement trucks and garbage trucks. And I spend a lot of time on the American prairie going to these facilities. They do take up a lot of space. They're not exactly aesthetic, but I don't know anybody. I don't know if you can see it from 114. And I don't see any abutters, and more importantly, nobody from Middleton who's going to have a problem here.
And this is very far off the beaten path from 114. You really can't even see any of the existing buildings that are closer from 114, even when it's winter conditions. I mean, you might be able to catch a glimpse of some, but it's very hard to see them. They are far back. And there's a lot of building already on 114 that obstructs as well.
Looks like you've got Creighton Pond Camp, and that must be in North Andover.
Across the street, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It looks like it's on the same side from the area.
Really? It shouldn't be, because behind us, we own like 30 acres behind.
Yeah, there's a lot of space out there which I think is great. We don't have to sort of micromanage it.
Yep.
Obviously, you've gone through Concom, right?
We did, yeah, we did with the prior approval, and this is a reduction in the actual building, and there's nothing to modify because if they look at disturbed areas, because we reduced the footprint, not increased it.
Is the only access on Sharpness Pond Road?
Yes, it is, Mr. Garber. So the only way you can actually access, and I can go to that. Katrina, do I have control again? Can we just go to the overall, the regular site plan? So you can see, so here is the project in its entirety. I'm going to make this bigger because it's easier to see. Ooh. Okay, let me move. 1 second. I'm just trying to move it over, Mr. Garber, so you can see it. Okay, here we are. So here's the building that we just spoke about, Building E. Here are the other buildings. I always call building B and D one building because they are connected. So this building is another building the Flame Laminating occupies. These are all in Middleton. These two buildings are occupied by, one is actually vacant, Pool Specialties, just, I think it's, can't remember that. It's plumbing supply and a pool specialty place. One of them left. I can't remember which one. And then building A and C, you can see them. They're both in North Andover. That's the line for North Andover. And then the way you enter the property is here's Sharpener's Pond. Here's the only way to get there is off of Sharpener's Pond, which makes it actually for the trucks so much better. So you don't have anybody stopping unexpectedly at a driveway here. The big trucks, they come down the street, they go into Sharpener's Pond and they like it. Although I was told that the number of tractor trailers coming here will be far less than an industrial use because, you know, they come, maybe you might have, you know, 10 large trucks ever accessing the facility in a day, and that would be a high number. For the most part, it's employees, and then, you know, you'll have people leaving with their trucks basically, and then delivery.
You're going by Little Sprouts in North, but that's in North Andover.
Yes, exactly. That's that daycare on the corner, and then you turn down, and there's, you know, across the street is oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Katrina. I appreciate it. So right in the left-hand corner across the street is an industrial buildings in North Andover, across from Sharpener's Pond, and then right here. And then you have in this corner, the Little Sprouts that Mr. McGlone just spoke of. And then when you come down the street, as Mr. Garber asked, how do you access? Here's the driveway. That's the only way to access the industrial park, as you can see. If you look right here, this entrance is for this front building. It's a different building.
Yeah, all that access is Andover.
All the access is through North Andover, yes.
So presumably you turn on to the driveway, and at some point you come back into Middleton.
Right here, this black line right here, Mr. McGlone?
Yeah.
That's the property line. This is Middleton. This is North Andover.
This is North Andover's problem.
I don't think they mind it. You know, this is a very industrial section of town. I mean, This is a 40B that they had approved across the street.
Yeah.
But that's in North Andover as well. And then our portion, Middleton's portion of this is all industrial. This is where Middleton Farm Supply is. I mean, it's all industrial.
They put in a very handsome contractor's bay building right there. I think the cyclist is up front.
Right here?
Yeah, they did. What I'm saying is they've self-consciously, North Andover has been self-consciously, you know, permitting industrial uses all along there and all around there for you know, the past 5 years.
Yep. Yeah, that, I mean, I think I got that project approved in 2014.
Yeah.
And it's a good looking building.
Yeah, it's just, for an industrial building, it was very well done.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that part too is used for retail. But it is a very good looking building.
So does anybody else have any comments?
Jill, one quick question. How much of the existing lot is paved? Is it all paved currently?
No, oh, God, that lot is huge. It's probably up more than 60 acres and much less is paved. I can't remember the exact number. I can look, but the percentage, the amount of open space, Mr. DiGregorio, is tremendous. I bet there's, Chris, what is it, easily 30 acres unpaved and wooded?
Yeah, it's at least half of it's not paved.
And
Maybe it's more than half.
And where we're doing the building reduction, is that reduction in order to make all the necessary spaces for the new pavement and the storage spaces? Or are we clearing anything and adding new pavement?
Great question. No, so that was the beauty of this. We are reducing the size of the building so as not to expand the disturbance areas. So those remain the same.
And that's
Not
why you
no
don't have to go to
additional-
Concon.
Right, no additional encroachment into the treed areas, only what we showed on that original approved plan.
Okay.
So just to clarify, Jill,
Yep.
we have applied for an amendment to our order of
Oh,
conditions.
you did? Okay, I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, we did because although the building got narrower, the stormwater design of the parking area, the grades in the parking area itself changed a little bit. So where we're sending water in the parking lot changed. And because we have several pipe changes and things like that, it was just too many changes not to go back to the Concom.
Makes
But
abundant sense.
the limit of work is unchanged.
Thank
Okay.
you, I appreciate that.
So then is there a motion to make a vote, to make a recommendation on the application to the ZBA?
I'll make a motion to give a positive recommendation as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second, Jeff.
Okay, so we'll vote. Mr. DiGregorio,
Aye.
Mr. York,
Aye.
Mr. Carroll,
Aye.
Mr. Garber,
Aye.
and I vote aye.
We appreciate very much your time. Thank you. And it'll be a great addition to the town. I'm excited about this new tenant. All right,
Definitely
thank you
the
very
appropriate
much. Have a
space
good
for it.
night. Appreciate
Good
your
evening.
time this evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
So item number 4, a public hearing, groundwater protection bylaw, proposed zoning bylaw amendment, map change. So who's presenting this, Katrina? Are you going to speak?
We can't hear you, Katrina.
You're muted.
What I was trying to say is, I forgot I wasn't sharing my screen either, and I was also muted. So what you need someone to read the public hearing notice first.
Okay, have we appointed a clerk secretary?
I think it's Nick Benugli, but I know Brian York used to be, so I'm sure Brian would be more
Brian.
than happy to read it.
Would you like to read that notice for us, please?
Yeah, I can read it.
Thank you.
Public hearing, Town of Middleton Planning Board pursuant to MGL Chapter 40A 5. The Planning Board will hold a public hearing on a proposal to add a new overlay district to the zoning map, amend the zoning bylaws, section 2.2 overlay districts, and add a new section 8.7 groundwater protection overlay district. The purpose of the proposed new overlay district is to preserve and protect existing sources of drinking water by preventing temporary and permanent contamination of the Zone 2 wellhead area south of Log Bridge Road and River Street. Due to the state of emergency in Massachusetts related to COVID-19, related to the COVID-19 outbreak, this meeting will be held in a virtual format accessible via a link. I'm not going to read the link. On March 10th, 2021 at 7 p.m. At this time, all interested parties will be heard. A copy of the text of the zoning proposal and maps related to this proposal can be found on the town website at middletonma.gov zoning amendments. There's a link in the public notice, and will be available for review at the town clerk's office, 48 South Main Street, in the planning office, 195 North Main Street. The planning office is currently open by appointment only at 978-777-8917. Dave McGloon, Chairman, Middleton Planning.
Very nice.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. York. That was excellent. No, it was. We've already voted on this, right?
Right. So do you want me to just go over the history of this? And hopefully the third time is the charm on this.
Third time is a charm. Thanks.
Is that the board first saw this in February of 2020. And at that meeting, Attorney Mann and Chris Rogers were there. And even though I had vetted it with them beforehand, they did have some more concerns. So we edited it, brought it back to the board, and I believe in March I believe it was April. In April, the board voted a positive recommendation for town meeting on adopting this because we had incorporated all the changes that Attorney Mann and Chris Rogers had mentioned. And as you know, we ended up not voting on it at town meeting because they wanted to keep town meeting very short. So they took off any article that didn't have to be voted upon, and they pushed it off till fall. Because state law says that a planning board recommendation is only good for 6 months before town meeting votes on it, we had to hold another public hearing last October. Same exact thing. The board voted a positive recommendation on it. Nothing has been changed on it at all. And again, that town meeting was canceled. So it is back before the board. We're hoping that we have a town meeting, and I think it's going to probably be the very end of May or very early June. And so you're being asked to vote on this again. And just in case anyone is watching the recording of this, I will go through the explanation of this. Is that Mass Drinking Water Regulations 310, Commonwealth of Mass Regulation 22, requires public water systems to protect Zone 2 recharge areas with municipal controls, which is either bylaws or health regulations. Local controls must meet Mass DEP wellhead protection regulations, which forbid certain land uses from being sited within the Zone 2 public water supply well area. The above proposed overlay district bylaw is based on the Mass DEP model groundwater protection overlay district bylaw. If the town does not adopt a bylaw that protects the Zone 2 well area, it would make the town non-compliant, which could jeopardize the town's Water Management Act permit renewal for withdrawal from the Ipswich River Basin. Now, part of the Zone 2 wellhead area falls, and you can see that we're right on the line here. The river is the border between Danvers. So a good portion of this groundwater is in Danvers. However, Danvers adopted a groundwater protection overlay district to protect their part in 2001. So we're only 20 years late, but really no one forced the issue with Middleton before. And now the state is really putting pressure on Middleton. We may not be able to allow certain development soon. I mean, you're worrying about insurance bond forms, but we may not be able to give them water. So we need to address this. This is a really important issue. This isn't the only thing that we're doing to satisfy the state too. There's other steps being taken in town, like adopting LID principles. We have to adopt certain regulations. I think you're going to see another article on the town meeting warrant soon that is going to restrict water usage even if you have a well. We used to have that regulation, but it was overturned at a town meeting, but the state is forcing it again. So they're getting really strict with us. So this is just one step we can do to help protect the wellhead area here. And as I mentioned, it basically just prohibits certain uses. It prohibits landfills and dumps and automobile graveyards. You can't stockpile snow. You can't store petroleum and fuel oil in bulk stations. There are a lot of things that we don't allow anyway. And actually our stormwater guidelines prohibit a lot of these. So it doesn't make a huge difference. But again, I will say that we contacted and we sent out notices to every single owner that was in this. We had one person show up that night when we had an open house. I did have a couple of the owners come to me and ask questions, and hopefully they were satisfied. I never heard from them again. So again, we're asking for the planning board to make a recommendation on this for the town meeting warrant.
Katrina, quick question. Where we think town meeting may not, it's not going to be in April, and sounds like it may be in May. Does it benefit us at all to table this, revisit it at next month's meeting? That way, in the event that we don't have a vote on it in May, there's a higher chance that our 6 months would get us to a fall meeting.
So we could do that. And I think we did it. Did we do it in October? We tried to stretch it out as far as we could. We could continue it to April. Yeah, I know the town warrant goes to press and they print it at the end of April. So it would give us enough time to get a recommendation if you wanted to do that. I have a feeling that the town meeting, they're not going to push it off further than June. There would be no reason. I mean, the schools will be done by what, mid-June? So I think the latest you'll ever see is the end of June. But I have a feeling it's going to be beforehand, even if it's under a tent on a parking lot. It's up to the board. I'm not too worried. I think, what does 6 months give us from today? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's September. So we'll definitely have this town meeting by then.
I would just get rid of it as that's just my recommendation as business. I know we went through, we compared it to Danvers. Danvers had, my recollection is they had adopted stuff more comprehensive than the state. And then we went through and sort of analyzed whether we had to essentially adopt the Danvers model or just the state model. And then we stripped out Danvers additions. So we've done a lot of thinking about this. And my feeling is that let's just approve it again. If you want to table it to extend its potential life, that's a good idea too, that Mr. Di Gregorio had. But, if we vote on it this evening, get rid of it, then we see it again. If we table it, we'll 100% see it again. And somebody has a very big dog.
That's my daughter's dog.
All right.
And the door is shut too.
I'm cool with voting on it now then too, if we think that, there's a high likelihood that this is definitely going to be heard at the, in the next couple of months.
Yeah. I don't think you need to table it.
Okay.
Get rid of it. Is there a motion to recommend that the town vote to adopt the proposed groundwater protection overlay district bylaw and amend the zoning map accordingly?
This is Anthony. I'll make a motion to recommend that the town vote and adopt the proposed groundwater protection overlay district bylaw and amend the zoning map accordingly.
And was there that a second by you, Mr. Garber?
I'll second that.
Okay, let's vote. Mr. Di Gregorio.
Aye.
Mr. York.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Garber.
Aye.
And I vote aye.
So you voted a motion to recommend. So we're all done with that agenda item.
Yep.
Perfect.
And we're all done.
All right. For the record, are there any hands up out there, Katrina?
No, there are not.
In Zoom land, All
None.
right. is there a motion to adjourn?
You don't need a motion.
We don't need a motion. I'll just call it, I'll just gavel us out then. We're done.